acting, like just coming up with a character, I think is very different from what you actually do when you're making a television show or a movie, you know. So when you're learning acting, it almost seems like all of those settings are built for the stage, and the actual nuts and bolts and technicality of acting for television or movies is really different. You know what I mean? Like everything's chopped up into tiny little pieces. And then occasionally you'll get to run through a scene one time in like a master shot. But then the detail comes and the close-ups and stuff like that. And so there was no preparation for that at all.
This is the Tom Rowland Podcast. Fascinating stories to amaze, encourage, and inspire you in fishing, fitness, and the outdoors. And we're brought to you by Black Rifle Coffee. I started this podcast as a way to connect with my friends, people that I admire and respect, and you. It has been a learning journey that's made me a better person, a better fisherman, a better father, and a better athlete. I'm so happy that you're on this journey with me, and I'd love to hear from you with show suggestions, guest suggestions, or questions. The best way to get a hold of me is through text. You can text 305-930-7346 for the fastest response, but if you prefer to email, you can send that to podcast@saltwaterexperience.com. That's a dedicated email address just for the show. If you like this show, you can show your support by posting about it on social media and tagging me. Text the link to a couple of friends that may also enjoy it, and subscribe and leave a 5-star review if you feel like I've earned it. The website is tomrowlandpodcast.com, and that is where everything lives. All past shows, you can go and listen to any show. You can look up all the different shows that we've done, both the How To Tuesdays, the full links, and the physical Fridays. They all live on tomrowlandpodcast.com. And the social media is Tom_Rowland, ROWLAND, on Instagram, or you can go to our big account, saltwater_experience. I hope to hear from you soon. So now, let's get on to today's show.
I'm Ethan Suplee, and this is the Tom Rowland Podcast.
All right, Ethan, how are you today?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Man, I'm just doing fantastic. I'm really happy to have you on the podcast. I've been a fan. I've certainly followed your career. It's very easy to follow some of the most iconic movies of our time you've been in, and if you look at your IMDb page, it's crazy. You've been so prolific in what you've done. It's just wild, and you've had these opportunities to be in these incredible movies and play these incredible characters. It's just really been very cool to watch. How did that start for you?
I kind of left high school early, and I had a bunch of friends I was raised in Los Angeles, and I had friends who were actors, and it really seemed to me like the best way to work without getting a job was to be an actor. You know, that was very appealing when I was a teenager. And so I went out and found an agent who would represent me. And basically the first day of auditions I was sent on, I wound up getting 2 jobs, and I took one, and that was a show called Boy Meets World in the early 90s.
Yeah. Wow. What a start.
Yeah.
That's pretty uncommon, really, for I mean, you always hear about the struggling actor that tries so hard and just auditions and auditions and auditions. What do you think the difference was that you have such luck right away? Or maybe it's not luck, maybe it's preparation meeting opportunity. I don't know.
I mean, as far as that goes, there wasn't a huge amount of preparation. Acting, like just coming up with a character, I think is very different from what you actually do when you're making a television show or a movie, you know. So when you're learning acting, it almost seems like all of those settings are built for the stage, and the actual nuts and bolts and technicality of acting for television or movies is really different. You know what I mean? Like everything's chopped up into tiny little pieces. And then occasionally you'll get to run through a scene one time in like a master shot. But then the detail comes and the close-ups and stuff like that. And so there was no preparation for that at all. I think I was just lucky, to be honest with you. You know, I went and happened to audition for a couple of things that I was right for on day one and started working. And you know, I got to do Boy Meets World for like 3 years, which was also crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, man. And then your career just progresses, and you just get. I mean, one of my favorites of all time is Remember the Titans. I mean, that was so good, and you were so good in that one. And we just watched that movie the other day with my son. He had never seen it, and so we watched it, and just man, that movie, it makes me cry every time. The whole movie, like it's just such a, like, I don't know. There's so many good actors in that movie, and the story's so good, and it's just, I don't know what it is about that movie, but those kind of movies always get me, like Rudy and that movie, Miracle. Like they just get me. Like I'm a sports fan at heart, and then if you get a movie like that can really tell that story, it's just, I don't know. It's iconic. Like
that's a special one for sure. It's hard to do, you know. There's like, I definitely feel like I've been in a handful of movies that are really good, but it's hard unless you're you know, like one of the main people who are making these decisions. I'm just going at that point from job to job basically. And I feel like I got very, very lucky many times.
Yeah. Well, in your career also, one of the things that I've followed is this weight loss journey and this relationship that you have. And you're quite open about it on your podcast, American Glutton. I really like your podcast. I've listened to a whole bunch of them, and it's really good. It's very interesting conversations, really about food and the relationship with food and just your journey. Like I look at you as like the David Goggins of weight loss, because you know what I'm saying? Like, because David Goggins, one of the things that he's talking about, he's like, man, there's all these people that talk about the theory of mindset and they talk about this and that. He's like, I am it. I have done it. And that's you. Like you have done this, and you have been in these places that I just think that so many people that are giving advice on weight loss and giving advice on mental preparation for it and just the whole process, I don't think that they've experienced what you have.
You know, it's such a tricky thing to really even talk about, because we are inundated endlessly with kind of what I think of as like get rich quick scheme diets, right? Where a person just has to make one tweak or they're sold on a 30-day program. And now look, if you want to lose 5 pounds, maybe that's all you need. But most of the people I'm talking to, and a large portion of the country at this point, is rapidly becoming morbidly obese. And so I don't think any of those solutions, those one shot, like, you know, whether it's I'm just going to stop eating seed oils, or I'm going to be a vegan, or I'm going to only eat meat, that to me is not a solution for a bunch of nuanced issues that have kind of overtaken your life to get you to this point of being, you know, hundreds of pounds overweight. And I think if we don't have some kind of a perspective shift on that, if we keep looking for these simple one-shot solutions to obesity, we're just never going to get there, as proven by the amount that we continue by percentage to get more and more obese. And, you know, every year there's a new thing where it's like, you know, now coconut oil is a big thing, and you're fine if you just eat coconut oil, and put butter in your coffee. That's it. That's all you have to do, and you won't be hungry ever again. And it's like, you know, I'm sure if David Goggins put butter in his coffee and decided this is going to fill me up for the day, it might. But he also can run an ultra marathon. So
Right.
I'm talking to people who can't do that or who aren't doing that, and like we got to have a bit of a perspective shift on our entire lives, basically, to combat this thing that we're mindlessly doing for our entire lives,
Yeah, it is. There is a lot of it that is mindless, because, maybe it's even that you're eating the same thing that you've always eaten, but the food's changed. And so the same thing that you've always eaten, you like these particular types of meats, you like these particular types of vegetables. Now they're coming in a different looking package, and you don't know the difference, and you just eat the same type of thing that your parents ate and the same type of thing that you ate all your life. And where did this come from? Like, what's going on here? And I'm trying to eat healthy, and that's the other thing is like, I hear people say, well, I'm eating clean, or
what does that mean?
I'm eating healthy. And it's like, I have to ask them, well, what is that to you? What do you think that is to you? What is eating clean? What is eating healthy? What is watching your diet? Like, what is it? And so I don't know. I just kind of like having the conversation with people that have been very successful with it, or even the other way of that it just has never quite worked for them. And it's like, I wonder what it is about certain people that it has worked, and people have lost tremendous amounts of weight and kept it off, and then other people that try and it just never seems to work for them. And I know that you would have a different perspective on that, because you've been both of those people, right? Like,
yeah, by the way, I've done every one of those get rich quick scheme diets. I've done them all. I've lost weight, and then I gained it back on every single one, because none of those diets address the rest of your life, So it's possible to lose a bunch of weight by making one alteration, but at some point, is that alteration going to be enough to get you down to a really healthy weight? Maybe not, and if it's not, then how are you going to make the adjustments to continue losing weight if you need to? And then if you do get down to a certain weight, you go like, this is the weight I want to be for the rest of my life. How has that diet set you up for that?
Yes.
I often thought about weight loss as this magical thing, like you hear about like Buddha sits beneath the Bodhi tree and achieves the state of enlightenment. And I would think about weight loss in those terms. Like, if I just lose 200 pounds, I will be cured. And it just doesn't really work that way. I'm also a sober person, and it's the same thing. Like, I've gone through rehab a number of times. This is many, many years ago. And you come out of rehab thinking, well, the drugs are out of my system. I'm done. I'm good. That's no such luck. You got to really work at your life to kind of put it back together. And I don't know that this necessarily applies to everybody, but I do think it applies to enough people that it's a statistical probability that if you've been a drug addict to the point where you need rehab, that it also requires a little bit more work towards staying clean once you're out of rehab. And similar to weight loss, you lose the weight and then you just go like, well, now I don't need to work at this anymore. And it's like, yeah, okay, well, not working at it got you to be obese because that's what you're conditioned to do.
And so where do you go like that? Like in your case, like you seem to have really gotten it under control here recently, because you're jacked, man. Like, you got a six-pack. Like, that was one of the things that you said in one of the things that I read. Like, you have achieved your dream of having a six-pack, and you look at your Instagram, you got a six-pack. So how do you do that? Like, lose 300 pounds and not only just do that, but also achieve a level of fitness that is incredible. Like, that's incredible. And that's to me, that's got to be something that's not just a calorie in, calorie out kind of thing. That's a mindset thing that you've had to work on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's less so now because I've kind of got my life structured in a way where, as it was 20 years ago, structured in a way where I was just gaining weight day in, day out. Now it's structured in a way where the gym is a part of my life 6 days a week at least. Occasionally, if I get super restless, I go and do a really light day on Sunday in the gym. I have cardio machines at my house. I take my dogs on walks every day. My life has become more active physically. And then, through really meticulous care, I have determined how much food my body can eat to maintain this size. And so if I want to lose weight, I know I just cut out a little bit. You know what I mean? But it required like the destruction of a ton of bad habits, like eating late at night and eating out of boredom and eating out of happiness or eating to comfort myself. Like all that had to go out the window. Like those for me are boundaries I don't cross. And that's not to say, I've also had the odd Christmas or Thanksgiving where my wife and kids are like, can you please, we've made this dish. We can see your abs. You've got a good jawline. Can you please try the dish that we put all this effort in? And then I go, yes, absolutely. Right. I can also like let my hair down in that way, but it's just very occasionally.
That's where you go a lot on your podcast, is like, to me, that's a relationship with food. Like you cut out like the celebratory meals, you cut out the depressed meals, you cut out the stress meals, you cut out the boring meals, and you develop this relationship that food is fuel. And, what I'm curious about, like when you're talking about that you have determined how much food you're eating now to maintain this certain size that you want. I'm sure over this journey that you've been on, you've talked to probably nutritionists, witch doctors, I don't know, every possible person that could possibly help, right? And I'm just wondering, when it gets right down to it, is it you that ultimately is in charge of it now, or are you still consulting with professionals, or like?
No, let me say this to you right away, Tom, because this is something I've actually gotten some pushback on social media from people who are like, you're a rich actor, you have a chef and trainers and this. Not true. I have no personal chef. I've never had I've never been that wealthy. That seems to me, I know a couple guys with chefs and they are really, really rich. So I think in order to get that, you got to be really rich. Yeah. I've been to all manner of nutritionists and dietitians, and I've had personal trainers, but this is over the last 20 years. And with each of those, I lost weight and then I gained weight back. And so the tool that I used 5 years ago that helped me was a Google search for a basal metabolic rate calculator. And I got a number, and then I spent 2 weeks monitoring that number. So it said X amount of energy could be consumed by me per day, and they call it calories. This word calories really upsets people. So I call it energy because that's what it means. It's energy, right? We've got these machines, these body machines that we put fuel into. And that fuel, the metric we use to basically weigh that fuel is calories. And, the Google search, the number the Google search gave me wasn't exactly accurate. I actually had to go below that because those things are not perfect. And it took me a couple of weeks. And then I had this number. Okay, on a low exertion day, here's the amount of energy my body needs just to exist, right? And based on that, I constructed what I ate. And I did some trial and error stuff and found there's some stuff where when I eat it, I don't feel great. Or when I eat it, I'm hungry right away. And so guess what? That stuff started to fall by the wayside because I don't really like being hungry, especially when I know I'm eating enough. And it had nothing to do with nutritionists. It had nothing to do. And this is like five and a half years ago now, And so there was a point before that where I was doing keto, and I got to the point where I wasn't losing weight on keto. So I got super strict, and then I still wasn't losing weight. And so then I started restricting my food on keto, and I started losing weight again. And I went, wait a second. If I have to restrict my food, because the whole thing about keto is like, eat whatever you want. If I've got to restrict my food, what is the point in this? Why am I doing this? And guess what? I added rice and bread and pasta back into my diet and watched my calories and started losing weight again. So like, that is my big warning to people, especially with massive weight loss. You start at 500 pounds or 350 pounds. It's still probably massive weight loss. If you got to lose 100 pounds or more, you start at 350 pounds. You do something that says you don't have to pay attention to what you eat at all. The amount of energy your body needs to maintain its weight, or the amount you need to reduce to get into a deficit, is going to change so much when you lose 50 pounds that if you just continue eating the same thing, you're not going to lose weight anymore.
Right.
This to me is the big fallacy of trying to use keto to handle massive obesity.
Yeah, because you can be keto and consume a tremendous amount of food. I mean, you can eat tons and tons of meat, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, eventually, I don't know. It obviously isn't working for everyone because it's not working for everyone. It works great for some people,
and I'm not knocking it for those people. Do whatever works.
That's the thing. How important do you think it is, like, when this is where I look at someone like yourself, far more so than to some weight loss guru person that is giving advice on Instagram. But like, a lot of people say, well, you just got to hit kind of rock bottom where you just really, really want to make a change. But some people really do want to make a change, and they try to make a change. And every time you see this person, they're trying to make a change, and they're following something, and they've been to a nutritionist, and they really want to make a change, but it's just not working for them. I mean, what do you think about that? Is it that you really have to make the change, or is it that you keep tinkering around with this until you find something that starts to work for you, like you just described?
Well, yeah, I will say I had many instances where I said aloud, even, I will do anything. Tell me what to do. I will do anything. I need to give up bread. Fine. Done. Bread is done. Right. But I didn't want it to be. And when I would say I want to do everything, I was thinking, like, just tell me the one thing to do.
Yeah. Right.
And it turns out it's a little bit more than just one thing. I would alter my route home when I was driving home to keep me away from the drive-throughs that I was accustomed to going through, because it was safer in the beginning to do that. And I could tell you every little thing, every little nuanced thing I did to alter my life, to safeguard my life so that I could be successful. But it was this persistent idea of, I'm going to find the thing that I can do. And then it was also backed up with, maybe it's going to be more than just finding the right diet. Maybe it's going to be addressing my entire life and deconstructing it and pulling it apart and going, how many bad habits am I not even thinking about? Like, I was teaching my kid, one of my youngest kids, recently how to drive. And I'm walking her through it going, she really has no idea of anything. And I'm going like, okay, gentle on the gas. Now start to turn. Now feather the brake, back to the gas. Now turn out. And so she's starting to go like, okay. And she's talking herself through every little step. That's not how we live our lives. Once you learn how to drive, you're not doing that. So if you in the future have this problem where you keep getting like speeding tickets and you go like, well, I'm just not going to speed. Okay, maybe that handles it. But if you go, my driving is a disaster as a whole, my driving is a disaster, and you try to handle that by just not speeding, maybe it doesn't handle it. And maybe you got to take it back apart to the point where you have to think through every step and put it back together in a better way. And that's basically what I did with my life. And now, look, I think a lot of people are going to hear this and go, that's too much work. Right. I'll just go keto. And I go like, okay, fine. Do what you're going to do. I'm just telling you, I tried keto. I tried, Fit for Life, the Beverly Hills diet, the cabbage soup diet, the potato diet. I tried every single diet that's existed, South Beach, the Zone, and I failed at all of them. Not losing weight. I was successful at losing weight, and then I gained the weight back at every single one. And so
why is that, do you think, with all the different ones that you just mentioned, that you ended up gaining it back? Because I have this conversation with a lot of people that have asked about weight loss and different things, and is it that's just not sustainable over time? Like, you can do that for 6 months and your family's going to be like, okay, well, all he's eating is cabbage soup now, and this is going to be okay for, we're going to support this for 6 months. But I mean, are you really going to do that for the rest of your life? You're going to eat cabbage soup only, or you're going to eat something only, or you're making yourself this social pariah forever? Like, is that, and some people are fine with that. Like, yep, that's just the way it's going to be. I've tried everything else, and that's the way it's going to be. But in your, you just reeled off 8 of them. Like, was it because it's not sustainable, or just too?
Well, a lot of those diets put you into a really, really severe caloric deficit. You're basically starving. I mean, some of them are 500-600 calories a day. The end product of that, if you go like, this is the rest of my life, you die, you starve to death. That's not, little kids eat more than 600 calories a day. So that is definitely not sustainable. And then, so it's kind of two things. One, if you're doing one of these starvation, super energy restrictive diets, that cannot be forever because you die. And you have created now they've shown this study in animals. I don't think they've ever shown it in people, but many times scientifically they can go at people and go like, well, this also applies. The human body, an adult human body, has a certain fixed amount of fat cells. And when you get fatter, those cells just expand, they get larger. The only time you kind of create a window to actually produce more fat cells is after you've starved. So if you withhold an extreme amount of food from yourself, and then you overfeed coming out of that, meaning you don't taper onto food slowly, you eat too much, you binge eat, your body wants to store that food so fast because it just thought it was dying because you were starving. So it creates more fat cells. So you actually get fatter by doing those super low calorie diets. That's number one. Number two, the kind of lifestyle changes where it's like, well, just don't eat carbohydrates anymore. Fine if you want to lose a little bit of weight. But if you have hundreds of pounds of weight to lose, or even 50 pounds of weight to lose, I would just suggest that you are just as likely to overeat fat as you are to overeat anything else. There's no evidence that says people just magically learn how to eat when they stop eating carbohydrates. They stop overeating. I know that I didn't only eat out of hunger. I ate many times for a myriad of other reasons other than just being hungry. And just eating fat is not going to get rid of all of the other stuff going on in your life that you're using food to kind of handle.
For sure. I just lost 20 pounds. And I did it just because I just thought, well, I weigh 191. That's too heavy. That's not what I should be. And I think, I've had this issue with my calf with running where I've just had lots of calf issues over the last couple of years with running. It's been very difficult to run. So I started thinking, well, I did this weight vest workout where I was wearing a 20-pound weight vest, and I finished the workout and I take this 20-pound weight vest and I throw it off and I go, wow, that feels amazing. I bet if I threw another 20-pound weight vest off, maybe I could get my running back. And
Yeah.
so that was really the motivation for me is that I really like to run, and I have not been able to run because of this calf thing. And I think of running as like this moving meditation for me, and it's like this, maybe it's good for my body, but it's definitely good for my head. And I just like it, and I want to get back to doing it. And I used to run marathons, and for some reason I've encountered these issues with my calves that I just, out of nowhere, just boom, just pops. And so I haven't been running, and I've been doing everything else, and so it's been fine. I can do all kinds of other things. But I threw this weight vest off, and I thought, man, 20 pounds off, that sounds, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. So I set the goal, and I did it. And in doing it, one of my techniques of doing this was that I'm going to track everything that I put into my mouth, when I put it in my mouth, what I put in my mouth, and I do it through an app. And I would get hungry, and I would get ready to go eat something, and I would be like, why am I eating? I'm only eating because I'm bored. I've got nothing to do right now, and I'm bored. Or you would see someone and you'd be like, hey, you want to go get something to eat? But I'm looking at my app and I'm like, but I've already eaten breakfast and lunch. What, am I going to have a third meal here and then dinner? Like,
Right.
It's like what you're saying. It's something else. It's boredom. It's a social thing. It's entertainment. It's celebration. It's whatever it is. But
And it's omnipresent, dude.
sure.
You go to Home Depot and you're checking out of Home Depot and they got food for you at the checkout.
Hey, M&Ms.
You know, yeah, you can't not go anywhere and not have food thrown in your face in this country. It is
if you got
everywhere.
kids, you're like, oh, wouldn't it be fun? We got an hour. Wouldn't it be fun to go get some ice cream? Like,
Right.
And the kids are going to have a great time. Yeah, ice cream. Let's do it. And then the next thing you know, you're going to get ice cream. And it's like, why are we eating ice cream? Because we're only eating ice cream because this is an activity. Like, this is an activity that revolves around food, and everybody loves ice cream. Who doesn't like ice cream? It's fantastic. But when it took like, and I already knew this, but it took this app and showing me that, look, in fact, you don't have anything left. Like, it has these little 3 rings, and when you fill up the fat, it fills the ring all the way up. And then you fill up the protein, it fills the ring all the way up. You fill up the carbohydrates, it fills the ring all the way up. So you can it's kind of like a fuel gauge, right? Like, you look at it, and that's when I look at it, and I'm like, okay, well, breakfast, I'm halfway through my day. Now I've got a small lunch, and then I still have room for dinner. And so you start thinking, okay, well, not only was I going to eat for boredom here, but I don't have anything left. Like, there's nothing left. So if I want to go do that, that's fine, but I'm not going to eat dinner. And then it's like a fuel tank. And for me, it worked really well, but it also, what was the most evident to me is pointing out when I was using food for any other reason than fuel. And it was really often.
Me too, dude.
Yeah. And I don't have hundreds of pounds to lose. I was just losing 20. And so when you think about like your journey, it's like, okay, there's a million things that you're using food for. And you got to get that under control. And like when we're explaining this and you're talking about your journey, there are probably a lot of people that are listening and going, whoa, that's a lot of work, man. That's a lot of work. But I guess that's where it really boils down to. It goes back to, well, do you want to make a change? And it's one thing to, do you want to make a change that's going to be a silver bullet, a quick fix, or are you willing to do the work that maybe that's what's required? And that's not a popular selling point.
No, telling people it's a total life kind of makeover. It's not popular because people are also being sold at the same time, just do this one thing and it will solve all your problems. And, for some reason we keep, as a society, buying into that because there's a new one every year. Every year there's a big new diet.
Even worse, like there's a pill, or you could take this supplement and you won't be hungry at all, and you'll just lose weight, or you can get a surgery. Even, right? Yeah,
there's endless get rich quick schemes out there for that are to solve for dieting. But I love what you're talking about with the food app, because like one of the big things that helped me was just journaling in the beginning. I did eventually find a food app also that I used for a little while, but I first just started writing everything down, and I would write everything down and write down all its values. And I was doing math all day long. And I was like, oh, now I know what the value of this is in terms of energy for my body. I just didn't know that before.
Right. And you didn't know, like, oh, I could eat a tablespoon of this, or I could eat a bowl of this, and it's the same thing. Like, I can eat a bowl of broccoli, or I can eat 3 potato chips, and it's going to be the same carbohydrate value, right? And for me, like, you learn when you're writing it down, you're learning, like, okay, this is the value of this, like you're talking about. But also, what a lot of people don't even realize is, like, this is a carbohydrate, a vegetable, and junk food. This is a fat. This is a protein. And how these all come together to make your daily caloric intake. And also, when you're writing down, sometimes you get ready to eat something and you're like, I don't want to write that down. I'm not going to write that down. So you just put it back, right? Like, it's the act of writing it down or putting it in the food app where you're like, man, that's good. For me, it's like these little circles. Like, if I put that in there, and I can actually do it in the one that I've got, the carbon diet. It's called the Carbon Diet Coach. Yeah, that's Lane Norton. Do you know him?
I do. He's awesome. That is a great app because it will make adjustments for you.
Right. But you can also put in whatever you want, and then you're like, whoa, that sends me to the moon. I'm taking that out. And you can, like, test it and put it in there and test it and see. But that has been really good for me. As far as exercise goes, you're doing a lot of boxing. What are you boxing so much for these days?
It literally was this idea I had at the beginning of the year because I hadn't been doing a lot of cardio, and I was like, I want to do a little bit more cardio, but I'm not a good runner. I have terrifically flat feet. I had done the last real kind of romance I had with cardio was on a rowing machine. And I jumped on a rowing machine early in the year, and I was so bad compared to what I had been able to do on a rowing machine. Like, I did a full marathon on a rowing machine once. And then that was discouraging. And I thought, what can I do where it doesn't matter that I'm bad? And I was like, well, I'll go do some kickboxing because, like, I don't need to be good at that. I've never been good at that.
Right. So Mike Chandler introduced us to one another. Did you meet him through boxing or through a gym like that? Or how do you know Mike?
I think we knew each other on social media, and then I just wound up going to a gym, not even realizing that he was there, that he was doing a training camp at, and that's how we met.
Oh, nice. He is a great dude. I really enjoyed spending some time with him. He's one of those guys that is very good at inspiration and motivation. I mean, he's transcending his sport, and he will easily be a speaker or a personality in that space. I think he's just, I don't know, really like him. But the boxing is that is a good workout for sure. Yeah. So you also like cycling, right? Like,
I haven't done that in a long time, but I used to. That was one iteration of weight loss where I just rode a bike 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, didn't eat anything, got really, really thin, and then crashed and gained a bunch of weight.
So that's not the answer either, right?
I mean, I think.
Can you exercise your way to I mean, that's the other question. Like, is it in the kitchen, or is it in the gym, or is it a mixture of both, or is it a mixture of that and mindset? I guess is like this whole conversation that we're having. It seems like it's all three.
Yeah, I really do think it's all of it. Whatever amount of energy you use up in the gym, you're going to use a lot more just in your life, just by moving around the house or the way you talk. If you're animated when you talk, that all costs your body fuel. And so I think it's everything. I do, for me, think it is mostly the kitchen. I think that's the vast majority of the problem I had. I was fairly sedentary but I think that came because I was overweight. And so the biggest hurdle for me is not that I want to sit and do nothing all day. It's that it was really tiring at 550 pounds.
Yeah, I can imagine. What are you working on now?
I've got a few movies coming out. A movie called God is a Bullet, and one called Babylon, and one called Manodrome.
Wow.
And and I'm just doing my podcast, and
How do
that's my
you
life
how do
right
you
now.
manage? Do those all shoot at the same time? I've always wondered that. Like when I was looking at your IMDb thing, like you'll have some years where you got a bunch of credits, and then a couple of years where it's just like one thing, and maybe I don't know. Maybe one of those years where you're doing a bunch of things is the busy year, or the one thing, or the time when you're doing just the one thing is the busy year. I don't know which is busier, having a bunch of jobs kind of going on throughout the year, or if you're working on like a series.
Well, I very rarely, I mean, I have in my life had two jobs at the same time, which then there's all kinds of scheduling nightmares that get into that when one job goes later than it's supposed to, and you've already agreed to start doing another job. That can be a real nightmare. So I try to make sure there's at least some cushion of space between them. But it tends to be a few months very busy and then a few months of not very busy. And, it goes back.
And that's
and forth.
when you can work on the podcast and stuff.
Yeah.
And do you
and
stack the podcast up? Like, do you try to do a bunch of episodes and then release them regularly, or that's how
once
I do
a
it.
week. Yeah, that's, for me, that's the best.
But you'll
that's
record
the
them
way.
all. You'll record a whole bunch of them at one time, and then let them go.
No, I'll try to record one a week, and then I'll always be like 3 weeks behind. So there's 3 episodes, but I'm still trying to record one a week.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make, what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so your podcast, American Glutton, what was the idea for starting that podcast?
A buddy of mine, Kevin Connolly, another actor, he started a whole podcasting company, and he asked me a number of times to do a podcast, with your friends. I'm pretty much like a political contrarian, where really I think of all politicians as criminals. I don't there's no team that's off the hook in my eyes.
Right.
And so we would often have these discussions, me and my friends, where it didn't matter who they were bringing up or what side. I would just take the opposing view and be like, well, that's BS. Those guys are criminals. They should all be in jail or hung for war crimes or something like that. And he wanted me to do a podcast like that. And I was like, you're crazy, dude. I'm a Hollywood actor. I can't do that's insane. Like I can't talk about politics. I certainly can't be a contrarian. This is for fun amongst friends. And like, I don't even know if I really believe any of that. I just think like it's funny to watch people get so bent out of shape about politics, which I really do have some disdain for politics. And so he kept saying like, come on, do it. It'd be awesome. You'll upset people, but people will love it. It'll be funny. And I finally was like, I'll do a podcast, but I just want to talk about health and fitness and setting physical goals and believing in yourself and stuff like that. And he was like, okay. And I found that it was really helpful to me, to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
I think amongst a group of people who all share my ideals with sobriety, sitting around and talking about that with them is also super helpful. But I didn't have that really with weight loss. And so it was like, well, I can talk to people about this in the form of a podcast.
Mm-hmm. And the journey, has it taken some twists and turns for you, or have you stayed consistent with, I mean, it seems like that's what you do, is you talk about that on your podcast, but I don't know, it's been going for a while. And this podcast that I'm doing has taken all kinds of twists and turns. I basically find people that I think are interesting and talk about things that I'm interested in. And a lot of times that's fishing, and a lot of times it's health and fitness, and a lot of times it's leadership. And then I'll get a chance to talk to somebody like Mike Chandler or yourself. And it's like, Just to your point, it has been as helpful to me as a tool to learn more, and a tool to become a better communicator, and a tool to have really interesting conversations that in this world of cell phones and stuff, it's hard to sit down with somebody for an hour and talk to them and get to know them, even if it's across a computer screen like this. But it's taken lots of twists and turns, and it's gone nowhere that I thought it was going to. And I just wonder, like, what your journey has been like in the American Glutton.
There have been so many people where before having done it, I would see somebody say something or read somebody's book and go like, God, I would love to talk to that person. And so now, to your point, I can, because I can, send an email or have my producer get in touch with them somehow and go like, would you come on my show? That's been invaluable to me, because there is, look, I have, I didn't even graduate from high school, so I have no real education, but I'm super interested in things that I'm super interested in. And so I'm like a sponge for that kind of data. So I've had, like you mentioned, Carbon, I've had Lane Norton on my show, and just having a conversation with him is fascinating, because he's like this PhD scientist, and
BS.
No BS.
I mean, with him.
He at all. And he's like, look, here's what the evidence says.
Right.
That's it. And so it's really, really fun to get to have those conversations.
Yeah. And I've done the same kind of thing, even with him. Now he likes to fish. So there's like a real commonality there. I went on the way back from a trip, I dropped in at his house and worked out with him, and dropped off some fish and did a podcast with him in his house. And that's what we were supposed to do today, but our plans changed. But we'll do that. So I saw a picture of you on your Instagram with a little bass. What's your experience with fishing?
That what you saw is about that's my total experience with fishing. But I am super fascinated by it. I really want to I really want to get a boat, and I was looking, I had this whole idea about what a boat was for a long time. Then I went and started looking at them, and come to find out, like, I really think the center console fishing boats are much cooler somehow than the kind of boats I was thinking about. And then I was thinking, like, that's pretty weird, because I don't really fish. Am I going to start fishing? And I thought, like, that could be cool. And I went on this trip with my family, and it wasn't the most exciting trip I've ever been on in my life, but I found that, like, I could go and throw this fishing lure in the water and be completely captivated for 4 hours straight, not looking at my phone, not thinking about anything. And I was like, that's really fun. So, like, I am definitely interested in fishing, especially, that thing, it felt like it put up a fight, but it was like a 6-ounce bass, or it was a tiny little
well,
thing.
We need to get you down to the Keys where you can mix fishing and food, and we go out and catch some fish that we can eat, like mahi or snappers or something like that. And then it's like, okay, now this is a whole different experience with food, because you're going to eat it in a way that you want to and keep some. That's really fun. I like that a lot. But I think you would like it, especially because the Keys are beautiful and awesome. You're not very far away, and we should definitely get you down there. The boat thing. The advice I would give you about the boat is start small.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on boats. I've over in Europe where you sleep on the boat and and it's fancy and all of that. And I'm like, that's way out of my reach like that. But I thought, like, oh, there's this one boat that's much smaller but still got a couple bedrooms on it. And we went and priced them, and I had no idea. So it'd be like buying another house.
Yes.
And then my wife was like, okay, I want you to dumb down and get go to the smallest thing you'd be thinking of. And that's still like, because I had no idea what this stuff cost. That still was the price of a house. It's just not a mansion anymore. It's still a fairly nice house. So that was kind of a rude awakening, just how expensive these things are.
They can be really, really incredibly expensive. And then on top of that, basically every boat's a compromise. So like you're saying, well, I want to fish in this little pond for the bass, but I also want to go out there and catch mahi on the weekend, offshore.
So you need two boats.
And so you either need two boats or you need a boat that's not going to do either one of those very well, or it's going to do one of them really well and the other very poorly. And so that's like the things, like every boat's a compromise. But the boating world is an interesting one, and you're in a great place, around your area, kind of South Florida area, of being able to go to the Miami Boat Show and being able to go to the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show, and basically being able to see every type of boat under the sun right there in one little place to walk around.
I've been to both of those boat shows. And I walked out going like, my wife's never going to say okay to any of this. She's never going to be okay with any of this. Cause even some of the tenders for the bigger boats are hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's just to get you to the dock.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have to be like that. No. The thing is like the funny thing about this conversation about choosing a boat, and then the conversation that we had about like weight loss, and the conversation that I have with people about fitness, is it's like what you have to do is you have to find something that is going to enhance your life. It's not going to cause undue stress and turmoil in your life. Like if you're going to go out and buy a $700,000 boat and your wife was thinking it was going to cost maybe 20, and you come back with this $700,000 boat, and it's all you want to do, and you spend all your time waxing it and riding around in it, and it's taking away time from the family, and it was way too expensive, and nobody supports this idea, as opposed to finding a boat that is a family-oriented boat that everyone is going to have a good time on, and it's going to enhance your life in this way. Just like a diet program. Like you're going to do something that is going to make every part of your life better, and your wife and your family and your loved ones and your friends and everyone is going to support this, as opposed to being on the cabbage diet or whatever, where where it's like no one, or they're going to support it for a little while. This is kind of cute and everything, but it's kind of like,
and then they're going to get fed up.
The house smells terrible all the time. But buying a boat is kind of like that. Like it really is. It's like you can find a way that you can get into the space fairly inexpensively, and the boats do hold their value very well. And that's what I was going to say earlier, is like if you start kind of small, then you get used to that boat, you're comfortable with it, and you're thinking, okay, now it's time to go to a little bit bigger one. If you've only put a year on that boat, it's almost worth what you paid for.
Oh,
and
wow.
Then you can, like, especially right now with all of the, right now there's like this whole supply chain thing, and outboard engines are incredibly hard to come by. And so many parts on the boats are incredibly hard to come by. So if you can get a complete boat, people are willing to pay over market price for a boat that is perfectly ready to go, turnkey, ready to go. They're ready to pay, because otherwise they're going to have to wait a year and a half. And that's kind of the world we're living in. Like, I don't know, Harley Davidson was like that many years ago, where you couldn't even buy one, right? So if you had one sitting in your driveway, it was worth 25% more than when you paid for it 6 years ago. Right. And so people were, okay, well, I guess I'll let it go. And people are doing that with boats now. But it's just a matter of finding the one that you can do something with the whole family and everybody kind of enjoying it.
Yeah, I've also got to show her that I can park it. Is that what you say? You have to say
well, you say dock it, but
dock it.
Yes, but yes, that is a challenge, and also putting it in the water from the boat ramp. But that's where a little bit of instruction goes a long way, and trying to do it by yourself, you can learn how. But having never done it before, then you end up on this Instagram called The Qualified Captain.
Yeah, I watched that one. That's pretty great.
You don't want to end up there. That's not where you want to be. That's
definitely
not where you
not.
want to be.
It seems like there are a lot of issues where people go from the intercoastal out to the ocean.
Sure.
There seem to be a lot of videos in that spot.
Yeah, well, those inlets can get incredibly rough.
Yeah.
And people are trying to go through there in boats that really shouldn't be going through there. And the big deals is when they have someone in the bow of the boat, which you should never have, because the bow is going, the stern's barely moving and the bow is going, going 8 feet up in the air and then slamming down, and people are going unconscious in the bow and taking a huge amount of water over it. And it's just they really shouldn't be doing that. And then somebody that's good at it, if you kind of keep your speed the way it needs to be and end up kind of surfing down a wave and accelerating into the next wave and surfing down the next wave and really working this throttle like a good captain is going to be able to do, you'll be able to just go through there no problem. Or even if you're a great captain, it still can be very challenging to go through those places. And some people, you just have a hard time. And so people just set up a camera and just like sit there and wait,
and they know they'll get something.
Yeah, they're gonna get it.
I have a question for you about docking.
Mm-hmm.
We have a boat lift, and on it somehow I guess you get the keel in between these two things.
Mm-hmm.
Is that seems unbelievably hard to line that up.
No, it won't be, because you're also going to have if once you were to get a boat, you would fit it to the boat lift, right? So there would be these pipes that would come up on the side that would help kind of guide the boat in there. So it's PVC, and you would kind of bump into the pole on one side and the other. If you didn't hit it perfectly, the pole would keep you from kind of going too far over to the right or too far over to the left, and then you can get the boat to where it's just going to slide on there, just like the trailer. And then you would just lift the boat lift out of the water, and you could get familiar with that very, very quickly. Within a half a day, you could have it to where, and I say a half a day because if you've never used that before, you're going to pull in, and sometimes you're going to get the boat just a little too far one side or the other, or maybe a little too far forward, or maybe just a little bit too far back, and then you're going to start to work it out, and maybe there's a cleat on the dock, and you're like, okay, I need to get the steering wheel exactly to this cleat, and it's going to be here perfect. There'll be some sort of marker, or you could make a mark on the dock somehow to where it's like, okay, I need to get the front of the console to this mark, and we'll be on perfect. If it's too far forward, that's a bad thing. If it's too far back, well, that's a bad thing. And then you can have these guide poles on there, and you'll be able to get it no problem. So it just takes 4 or 5 times you'll get it.
Right. This is the stipulation my wife made. I have to prove I can park the boat.
Well,
fair. Seems fair.
Having someone like whoever sells you the boat, or I don't know, if I'm around, I'll come down there and just show you how to do it. And then you do it a couple times on your own. Okay. Or it's like maybe a couple more times before I'm super comfortable with this, but you can get it to where, you're going to be able to put it back in the same place at exactly the same way every single time.
Right.
And it wouldn't take you long. Now, depending on what kind of boat you're talking about, because you can get a boat that's hard to handle, and the wind starts blowing and things like that, and there can be some difficult positions there. But I would imagine that what we're talking about is just putting it on a boat lift, not going to be a big issue.
Okay. I look at the size of the boat that I was looking at, and I look at how small that space is, and I just think hitting that tiny little space.
It might be you might not have the appropriate boat lift there for the size of boat that you're looking at. How big is the boat that you were considering?
40 feet.
Okay. So
I don't know what it weighs. The boat lift could hold it.
Yeah. So maybe they might need to come and adjust the boat lift. It could be set for a much smaller boat, and even though it's a very powerful boat lift, the previous owner or whoever put it in might have have had a much smaller boat. So you can have
Got
a
it.
boat lift that's a giant boat lift, but it's only set up for a small boat, where
Yeah.
then you could move those out a little bit and set it up for the boat that you would get. But 40 feet, 36 to 40 foot boat, that's legit for sure.
It's a big boat. Yeah.
That's a big boat, and it probably has at least 2 engines, if not 3 or sometimes 4 on that. So there's a learning curve to that boat, and it might be kind of, well, maybe a 26 is where you should start. And then,
is that something you can take into the ocean?
Yes, for sure.
26?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. We have a 26 yellowfin, both with a single engine and then another one with twin engines, and we'll go, way out into the ocean on the right day. It's just the kind of thing
Right.
where you pick the right day. And if it's the wrong day for a 26 to be out there, I'm not sure you're going to want to be out there in a 36.
No, the whole reason I thought, like, well, this looks safe to go in the ocean,
Right.
But if it's 26,
Well, I mean, we just need to, like the whole thing about boat size and all of that is expectation. Like, where exactly are you thinking about going, and under what weather conditions, and what's a good choice to start, right? Because a lot of people get too much boat, and it's overwhelming, and it's hard to handle, and they're uncomfortable with it, and they never use it. And so they got a $300,000 boat, $500,000 boat sitting there that they're afraid to use. And that's not what you want. That's why I would say kind of maybe start smaller, and maybe get a boat that you can use inshore and get comfortable with, and go offshore on the right days, and then maybe upgrade that in a year.
Yeah.
Right. And then you get, like, go from single engine to twins, and go from, a 26 to a 32 or something like that. And then all of a sudden it's not as big of a jump. But can you do it? Sure. Just take some time.
Take some time. Yeah. And until then, my wife will keep trying to sell me a kayak.
Yeah. Well, kayaks are fun too.
Sure.
So
it's not quite a boat.
When are these movies that you're working on now coming out?
Babylon comes out around Christmas, I believe. I am not sure. Sometimes you do a movie and you have no idea when it's going to come out.
Sometimes you do a movie, I would guess. I've always heard these interviews with actors that the movie just turns out amazing, and they're like, I didn't know that it was going to be so good when we were doing this.
Sure,
like, is it? Which ones have you been surprised about that turned out better than you thought, or you just had no idea and they turned out to be these iconic?
Well, I had a movie that had really weird stuff happen called The Hunt, which I really liked. I actually thought The Hunt was a really, really good movie, and it was so right up my alley because it kind of made fun of every political side. But when that was supposed to come out October 2019, and they ran ads during, I believe, the Democratic National Convention, which was on CNN or something, some Democratic thing. And the Democrats were enraged because the way the preview looked, it looked like it was not a pro-Democrat movie. And then the next weekend there was like a shooting, and this movie's called The Hunt, and the Democrats were so pissed off they pulled the movie. No, that's not true. The Democrats were so pissed off, and then something happened, and then Trump got mad at the movie, and he said it was anti-Republican. So then the Democrats were like, oh, okay, well, let that movie come out then. And then he got pissed off and was saying like a bunch of stuff. This movie is an attack on Republicans, which it's not. It's not an attack on, it's an attack on politics.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a shooting, and then then they were like, we can't release this movie right now. It's too, like, the Democrats hate us, the Republicans hate us. This is too much. And then the next release date we got was March 13th, 2020, which was the weekend that everybody stopped going to the movies.
Yes.
So, and that was one that kind of came and went. and I really thought that was a, if you like, it's a comedy and it's super violent, so there's that, but I thought the humor was really smart.
And so did it ever come out, or did it go?
Yeah, I mean, it came out for that weekend. Nobody went to see it because COVID had just begun.
That was like right when the NBA shut down, right? Like March.
Yeah.
Whenever I think about when did COVID start, that certainly got my attention. When I remember just hearing the NBA just canceled the rest of its season. I was like, what? There's no way that happened. Are you kidding me? And that was it. And boy, right after that, things got serious.
Yeah, that's the weekend they decided to release our movie. And then it was on, it might be on HBO now, but it's around. It's called The Hunt. And that was one of those ones where while we were shooting it, I thought, like, I don't know how this is going to be. And then I really liked it. I actually genuinely liked it.
Yeah, I've always heard that with actors that do they post interviews of, either it turned out way better than I thought, or I really thought this one was going to be pretty good, and it didn't. Yeah, just didn't come together as I don't know, someone envisioned. But last question: what is it? Which has been the movie that you've liked, or series that you've liked working with, whether that's because of the director, because of the other actors that you're working with, or I don't know. What do you have one that stands out?
Yeah, my all-time favorite job was a television show called Chance.
Oh, I know that one.
Yeah, we did 2 seasons of that. It's on Hulu. That's my favorite job I've ever had.
The funny thing about that, I was just telling Jake, our producer here, it's like he had this one that I was watching, and so about that time that came out, that's when I decided, man, I'd really like to get this guy on the podcast.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so that was one of my things that I did. I watched that whole series because I was trying to learn a little bit more about you, and I was following this whole journey, and then I put everything together. I'm like, oh, that's the guy that's been in all these other movies, and then you've had this incredible weight loss journey, and it just seemed like I could have a great conversation with you. And so I watched that one, and it was spooky, and you were great in it, but it was a good, I don't know, there was a good balance between Hugh Laurie and you, and the story was, I don't know, it was just pretty cool. So Jake and I were talking about it, and he hadn't seen it yet, and we watched the trailer yesterday. But nice. That one was good. What was it about that one that you liked so much?
I like playing a smart person. Mm-hmm. I don't often get to play a smart person, and I really knew what I was doing in that, which was really fun, and I was tough. I'm not often tough.
Yeah, well, you were in that one. That one was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, it's been great to get to know you a little bit, and hope that we'll be able to go fishing together. And
me too.
And we'll get you down to the Keys. That would be awesome.
Yes, sir.
So, are you working all through the winter here, or should we try to get together?
Let's try to get together. I mean, look, I have some sporadic work plan, but I'm not like leaving the country or anything.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll stay in touch, and we'll get together, and really appreciate you coming on the podcast and telling us your story. It's awesome.
Tom, thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you. Okay, we'll be back next week with another awesome guest, just like Ethan Suplee.